And Paul, let's get underway. I'll remind you, if you're just tuning in, we're in double elimination Sunday, but we've gone past that now. Now it's going to be elimination matches here for our players. So everything on the line for these two: win and continue, or lose and call it a tournament. Let's get things rolling.
Yeah, and for those of you wondering why Emma right there chose to draw, it is because Austin Bursavich was the first seed, so he does have the option to go first. So Austin is going to be the one going first. It's not like a voluntary, I choose to go second.
That's right. Yeah, boy, Emma would so much prefer to go first in this matchup. It's a huge difference when, it's not just a normal aggressive deck with a creature curve. It has these cappers, specifically Embercleave, to deliver a finishing blow over basically anything that Bursavich can put onto the battlefield with a mind to block.
Yeah, and Austin's first hand was a pretty clear mulligan, just not a whole lot of action and only 2 lands. I imagine he's going to be keeping this hand. Giant Killer, very strong in this matchup. He's got the Lucky Clover, and really just needs to find land number 4 to be able to land that Omnath. My guess is that he's probably going to be putting that Escape to the Wilds on the bottom, as that allows him to make sure he has enough plays in the early phase of the game. But it looks like he's actually going to go with the Clover here, given that he doesn't have a whole lot of adventure cards in his graveyard. Oftentimes, Giant Killer is only going to have 1 target.
All right, let's see how the early stages go. These can be really critical, particularly if it's Emma Handy who ends up winning the game. These first few turns, getting something onto the battlefield and setting up for that Embercleave that you see in hand here for Emma can be critical. A second copy of Edgewall Innkeeper off the top of the library to kick things off means still just going to be a turn 1 Edgewall Innkeeper, but that's a perfectly good start, perhaps the best start for Emma's deck. Passes the turn back over to Austin.
Yeah, and a great draw here from Austin in Lotus Cobra. His team is actually playing 2 copies of this powerful creature in the main to allow them to get more explosive starts and potentially play Omnath on turn 3. However, unfortunately,
Go ahead.
Unfortunately for him, Emma has the perfect answer in Bone Crusher Giant. And I think that's also primarily the reason why many other teams have chosen not to play Lotus Cobra, because of the existence of this powerful creature. Nearly every deck in the format, if you're playing red, you're basically going to be playing 4 copies of Bone Crusher Giant in your deck.
That's right. So Stomp is going to take out the Cobra. That's going to let Edgewall Innkeeper chip in for 1 damage, knocking Austin down to 19. Austin plays a Triome and ships the turn back over to Emma, who's surveying the scene here for her 3rd turn of the game. Looks like she's going to play untap land into Bone Crusher Giant with the Edgewall Innkeeper trigger, and another Edgewall Innkeeper. No more adventure creatures in hand here for Emma, but if this game does drag out a little bit, let's say there's an answer for the Giant, those Edgewall Innkeepers can come down, and then any adventure creature off the top is just going to reload the hand here for Emma.
Yeah, so really nice draw here from Austin Bursavich. Finding that land means that on the following turn, he can go Omnath into Fabled Passage into Escape to the Wilds. And as you can see, he did not run out the Omnath here. I think oftentimes people watching will be like, well, all right, play Omnath, next turn, go off. However, that does leave yourself vulnerable to Primal Might, which Emma is playing 4 copies of in her main deck. So instead, Austin going for the chop down here on the Bone Crusher Giant, and then sequencing this in such a fashion where next turn he can go Omnath into Fabled Passage into either Escape to the Wilds, or just play out a Bone Crusher Giant if there's too much on the battlefield.
So chop down, still 2 damage coming across, plus the 1 from Edgewall Innkeeper means that Austin's down to 15, but a pretty productive use of mana that turn, as you mentioned, Paul. Now it was Scavenging Ooze off the top of the library here for Emma, and she's going to go into the tank and try to sort out, well, how should I deploy my cards here? There's a Fabled Passage there as well that can get a second green source, so we could see something like Scavenging Ooze plus Edgewall Innkeeper, for example.
Yeah, some fairly small creatures here. Looks like actually choosing to pump the Scavenging Ooze to make sure that it can't get stumped by a Bone Crusher Giant.
Yeah, main phase, just gobble up The Cobra. Now, here's a big hitter, though, for Austin.
Here it is.
Omnath plus, you see the critical play here, and this is the sequence that you want, right? 5 mana, or, you know, with 5 land drops total here, this is going to be Escape to the Wilds after Omnath already gained 4 life and drew a card for you this turn, and boom, the full reload and a huge swing for Austin.
Yeah, that's tough. And now Emma is going to need to try to close the door here very, very quickly, because Austin now has so many resources available to him. Next turn, he can go Clover into Fertile Footsteps, get a bunch of lands, Bone Crusher Giant to wipe the board. I mean, Emma has an okay attack here, right? She can attack with Scavenging Ooze, slap an Embercleave onto it, and you know, attack in for 8 damage, but that's not close to enough right now.
Also curious to see if Emma goes for land attack with both, perhaps even being willing to trade off that Innkeeper for Omnath, were it to get blocked.
Yeah, if I'm in Austin's side, you know what the card is, right? You're not going to block. If it's not a lethal attack, he's sitting at a healthy 19 life. If you do survive the attack this turn, all of a sudden, you just play a land, you get some of that life back, right?
That's right. You play a land, you get 4 of it back. And then, in fact, in this case, it would be, you know, all of it. And then on top of it, there's a Lucky Clover in hand plus 2 different adventure creatures. Sorry, 3 different adventure creatures in that exile zone from Escape to the Wild. So Austin is primed for a devastating turn. It looks like Emma is going to go ahead and just jam here, getting, well, quite a bit of damage in, 6 damage, but nowhere near lethal. Austin gets to untap with all of these resources available.
Yeah, I mean, Emma has a singular game plan now. It's to kill you with my Gem Razor and slap an Embercleave onto it and hope you don't have an answer. And right now, I mean, Austin currently, there's a Bone Crusher Giant, but that's only 4 damage, so that won't necessarily get it done. Austin does have a Fae of Wishes here, so he can wish for something potentially to get that Gem Razor off the battlefield.
Better have an answer for the Gem Razor, because Emma is setting up for a cleave win next turn, potentially, if Austin doesn't have a way to interact.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to Fertile Footsteps, get 2 lands, so that'll give him access to 7 mana here, with that Omnath, of course, that's in play, which will then allow him to look for 2 cards from his sideboard with the Fae of Wishes, and find something like a Return to Nature if he's concerned about a potential Embercleave, or you know, if he has a way to just remove the creature itself, can just go choose to do that as well.
So there's Giant Killer now. Austin trying to figure out what to do with the mana remaining. It looks like he has access to 7 right now.
Yeah, oftentimes you're kind of incentivized to want to cast all the spells from the Escape to the Wilds before you lose access to them. Mm-hmm. So that's probably what he's going to be looking to do here. You know, he's going to have 3 mana available to him. And he's also very well aware that the one card that he can lose to in this spot is Embercleave. So he will definitely look to find something from his sideboard that can help prevent that from happening.
Primal Might was gotten with the first copy of Granted. There's the other copy on the stack here, and it is Red Cap Melee.
All right, and he still had an extra land drop available to him, so this is actually great. Yeah. He has just enough here to Primal Might, turn his Omnath into a 7/7 to get this Gem Razor off the battlefield.
Boom, and there goes Gem Razor into the graveyard. And Austin passes the turn back to Emma. So Emma has to rebuild now. She had a game plan based around Gem Razor and Embercleave, and Austin was able to piece together using all of that mana. It actually took basically everything he had, but he was able to get the Gem Razor off the battlefield, leaving just the 1/1 with Austin at a healthy 17 life. So now it's back to the drawing board for Emma Handy. Still has access to Embercleave, but triple Edgewall Innkeeper here means an adventure creature, please, just the one time.
Yeah. And Emma can just choose to attack here. I think it's just the free point of damage that she'd be getting in, right?
Mhm.
She has 5 mana up, attack. Austin's not really looking to trade an Edgewall Innkeeper with that Omnath. Especially if you look at his hand, he's got an Escape to the Wilds that he wants to get further advantages from. So that is a free attack. But what Emma really needs to even have a chance of kind of clawing back into this game is finding an adventure creature, right? There's 3 Edgewall Innkeepers potentially here. So what she really wants to do is just kind of get the ball rolling and draw a bunch of cards with some adventure cards. But at that point, it might still just be way too late. I mean, look at how much mana and resources that Austin has available to him. I think Emma just wasn't able to put on enough pressure here, and Austin just kind of had all the answers.
Yeah, it's really starting to feel like this one's slipping away from Emma Handy. Really threatening board with the 6/6 Gem Razor and an Embercleave in hand, but Austin, having found the answer, has really put it to Emma Handy here, who just doesn't have the one really big threat to put Embercleave on. It's just a bunch of 1/1s.
Yeah, I mean, Emma's close to just getting burned out here by the third ability of Omnath.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that trigger multiple times now. Austin's gained, 12 life off of this Omnath?
Yeah, oh my goodness. This is just value overload here.
Okay, so now Austin's just going to cast Giant Killer here, get a couple more cards. Oh boy, Shatter Skull smashing there as well. Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, when this deck kind of goes off, there's not a whole lot you can do to stop it, right? Anytime you resolve an Escape to the Wilds, if you can cast those cards, you're basically drawing 5 cards. With the Lucky Clover and all the advantages you get from casting all those adventure spells, I mean, this game is basically just over.
Right. Austin was able to maintain a high enough life total to not be under immediate threat of death from an Embercleave, and was able to use basically the one extra turn that he got off of having Omnath and keeping that life total high.
Look at Emma laughing.
This is
sure.
A bit absurd. Even Emma has to say, okay, buddy. The Rushfire Elemental may have been relevant if drawn a few turns ago. Again, this can be one of those cards that out of nowhere can come down, get to be like maybe even like a 5/5, and then pick up an Embercleave and get in for like a unexpected amount of damage. But unfortunately for Emma, not even close this time. And she's going to scoop him up. Game number 1 goes to Austin, who is now going to look at the sideboard. And again, I find this fascinating because they have a wish sideboard, meaning that the sideboard is set up for Granted in the main deck, and you have 4 copies of Granted and generally 1 copy of any given sideboard card. So it's tempting to just leave them in there, but Granted is slow. And Emma is applying serious pressure to your life total and threatening to kill you kind of out of nowhere. So you will often see the players bring in a few of the sideboard cards to take out a few of the slower cards in the main.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we saw Nassif do in his matchup against Autumn Burchett, where particularly when he was on the draw. I believe when he was on the play, he just kind of kept everything as it was. But when he was on the draw, given that sometimes or oftentimes you're just not going to have time necessarily to spend a turn off to wish, he basically just brought in a lot of his cards because he just wanted to naturally draw them instead of spending time to find your Return to Nature or find your Red Cat melee. He just brought some of those cards in.
Okay, game number 2. Remember, these players are playing for 2 things. First and foremost, the loser, they're done. This is an elimination match. But second, the winner gets to advance to the next round to play against Autumn Burchett, who awaits. So let's see if Emma can pull the 2-game comeback. This deck is absolutely capable of doing exactly that. As you can see, both Autumn and Emma finding themselves in the top 8 here. And a lot of that based on the fact that they chose this Gruul deck that really was kind of off the radar for Standard, and they smashed, and they've been preying on these Omnath decks, no doubt about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Emma does have a solid hand here, right? You have the Edgewall Innkeeper with a couple of adventure cards. So a solid start, but Austin's hand is also pretty great here. He's got the Lotus Cobra with the Beanstalk Giant, and most importantly, those cheap forms of interaction in Giant Killer and Brazen Borrower.
Ooh, the Lotus Cobra, though, you know how scary that is. I'm curious to see if Emma's just going to go ahead and fire off the Thundering Rebuke. We saw that in the first
100%.
Surprise, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just tough because, you know, there's a Lovestruck Beast on an adventure. Oh, Bone Crusher Giant. That might be an interesting one too. But yeah, boy, Paul, that Evolving Wilds again, you know, the turn 2 land drop here from what is ostensibly a 2-color aggro deck, slowing Emma down a little bit, preventing her from getting the Edgewall Innkeeper on the battlefield last turn.
Yeah, I imagine we're going to see a Stomp here, followed by an Edgewall Innkeeper this turn. And then, yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward turn for Emma here. You cannot let Lotus Cobra live. That is a must-kill card in this matchup.
Just too scary.
Yeah.
So good turn here for Emma. Gets a chip in for a damage here. Add an important card, Edgewall Innkeeper, to the board. Especially with Bone Crusher Giant and Lovestruck Beast sitting in the Adventure Zone, and take out that key Lotus Cobra. Really one of the scarier cards that Austin has available.
Yeah, and the big thing here is Austin just does not have a way to actually kill this Edgewall Innkeeper. So Emma's going to continue to just being able to draw cards while just continuing to deploy threats turn over turn. You know, Austin is well set up here on his mana, but he still needs to find.
Whew. There's a Brushfire Elemental as well.
Payoff card.
Boy, the damage is really starting to add up. It feels like Emma kind of has all bases covered here. She can go for developing her board further while still drawing cards, or even go for the more immediate damage with the Brushfire Elemental to start slamming and get that life total nice and low. Lots of options here for Emma. This draws turn out very nice.
Yeah, I think what Emma really wants to do is play one of her 3-drops this turn. It just sequences really nicely. You play a 3-drop this turn. Next turn, if you draw land number 5, you can then play an additional 3-drop and the Brushfire Elemental.
Yeah, and she's got it here. So there's the forest off the top of the library with Fabled Passage already waiting there to double trigger the Brushfire next turn. Beautiful stuff here from Emma Handy. And let's not forget a couple of damage here. It all adds up.
Yeah, really good sequencing. Next turn, we're going to see Brushfire Elemental into Fabled Passage, crack into Bone Crusher Giant. So then she's going to be attacking with multiple 5/5s and be able to draw a card off that Bone Crusher Giant.
Yeah, that's beautiful stuff. You know, it's not often that the aggressive deck gets to refill its hand while also deploying threats, but that is the power of Edgewall Innkeeper in this deck. Now what is Austin going to do? Taking a look at the scene, you see the Giant Killer there, perhaps for the Lovestruck Beast, but
yeah, not a ton. I mean, he's going to be able to interact here, right? He's got Chop Down here on the Lovestruck Beast. Then he can choose. I'm not sure if he's got a white source in his hand. Does he? Yeah, he has a Branchlock Pathway, so he can actually choose to kill Lovestruck Beast and just run out the Giant Killer. By running out the Giant Killer, you do just put a 1/2 body in play to just kind of block the Edgewall Innkeeper and the token. And then this way you can also kind of save the petty theft on the Brazen Borrower until potentially a later turn to help interact with Primal Might if Emma chose to keep some of that in, or also of course Embercleave. Wow.
Now there's a second copy of Edgewall Innkeeper, which throws a little bit of a wrench in the works for that line that you described earlier, Paul. But it's a good wrench to have thrown in because it means Emma has even more options on drawing cards.
Yeah. This is interesting. Emma has a couple of good options here. Can just go with that line that we talked about before, or just kill Giant Killer, attack for 7, and play another Edgewall Innkeeper here. And next turn, all of a sudden you're drawing multiple cards here off that Bone Crusher Giant. Yeah, oof.
It's like Austin's praying for something here. he wanted Shatterers. I didn't see what he brought in, but
right. He's saying something to the camera. The unfortunate thing here is that previous turn he played in Cracked Fable. Did he play in Cracked Fable? Oh no, he did not. He did not.
All right. Well, here's Omnath off the top of the library. Is that going to get the job done here?
I mean, Emma's got the answer in Thundering Rebuke here to get that Omnath off the battlefield. The only thing Bursavich can do here is basically just bounce the Brushfire Elemental.
Chat says that Austin wanted Fae of Wishes.
Yes. He's got
Blazing Volley.
Blazing Volley. Blazing Volley would have been sick. Yeah. Oof. That would have been phenomenal.
Well, that has to be what he was thinking about there. In the meantime, boy, oh boy, has this been Emma Handy's game. Just everything lining up perfectly here for Emma. Perfect sequencing for the first 5 turns of the game, using up basically all of her mana and delivering huge beats. This is going to put Austin in a position where he's going to need to find very specific outs and very quickly, or this game's just going to be over.
Yeah, I'm not, I think you're just too far behind. You just have to try to prevent as much damage as possible. Hope Emma doesn't have the Ember Cleave here.
And if that's the case, which it is, then Austin actually does get a little bit of time. Look at that.
What a topic. He sideboarded it in. That's a wish target.
Is that a Ketria Triumph over on the left?
It is a Ketria. All the Triumphs tap for red mana.
Okay,
so he does have the mana to play Storm's Rest. I mean, that was one of the best possible draws here for Austin. I mean,
just cold ripped it too. Wow.
I mean, to be fair, Emma is still in okay shape, especially if Emma can find something like a Fabled Passage or Evolving Wilds off the top. That's 10 damage off those double Brushfire Elementals in her hand.
Yeah, we were talking about how the Evolving Wilds was an awkward card on turn 2, but the reason it's in the deck, right, is for situations like this. If she can find one of those fetch style lands, bang, bang, bang.
Wrath off the top.
Yeah, that was clean living there for Austin. And there it is. Oh!
Oh, no.
We got a game here. No doubt about it. It's a big turn for Emma.
Yep.
And it's an Ember Cleave.
Now, it's an Ember Cleave, but you cannot cast it.
Here. Yeah.
Wow.
But that is certainly one of the most powerful cards that Emma could have found going forward. So let's see how she wants to navigate.
Yeah, I'm thinking Brushfire Elemental, attack for 1, play Bone Crusher Giant, and then next turn set up for potentially a lethal Ember Cleave. So Emma's still in okay shape, but remember, Austin's got a redraw here. He can cycle one of these Triumphs.
What just happened there?
Did she pass through her second main?
Yeah,
she has to have.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh, that is devastating.
Wow.
That is devastating. And I got to give respect to Emma here because she's just kind of laughing at the situation here because what else can you do? But that is a awful misclick. Just the timing on having that happen. I mean, we've all done that, right? Where you just click through, but that's devastating.
That is so rough.
This isn't over, right? There's a Beanstalk Giant on the battlefield now. And we're going to have to see if Emma can make a comeback here from that mistake. Because getting that 4/3 Bone Crusher Giant on the battlefield, it would have killed the
Beanstalk Giant.
Was huge. That's right. I mean, we're just talking about the difference between being able to swing in with a real threat, get an Ember Cleave on the battlefield, and start progressing a game plan versus basically starting over again at this point.
So now Emma can go Brushfire Elemental, play Shatterskull Smashing untapped, and then still slap Ember Cleave onto one of these creatures. That would mean that Emma could then get in for 8 points of damage. So could actually trade a Brushfire Elemental for Beanstalk Giant, right? Because you go Brushfire Elemental, play a land, becomes a 3/3, attack with both, Ember Cleave, kill Beanstalk Giant.
This is not over yet. Emma just took a deep breath, said to herself,
Wait for the next turn.
Okay.
Austin needs to draw something.
I'm back in this game. And yeah, Austin needs to find some action still. This is not over.
Actually, if Austin doesn't find any way to interact or a creature, Austin's dead, right? Because you block the Bone Crusher Giant, 2 Brushfire Elemental triggers, that's 6 damage, plus the Embercleave, that'll be exactly 10. Yeah, I think Austin is still dead here.
Yeah, Austin has not found anything. He found another copy of Lucky Clover, but the Brazen Borrower you see there is on an adventure, so Clover's not going to do anything with that.
Yeah, he needed to find action, and Emma's going to win this.
Now, is there any reason for Emma to not go for it?
I don't think so. I feel like you just kind of have to at this point, right? What are you going to do? Just like stare at that Beanstalk Giant the whole time and hope Austin taps out? Austin has so much mana available to him at this point. He could just always keep up 2 mana and kind of freeze Emma. I don't know. I feel like this is just kind of a turn to go for it. You play your land, attack with everything. Austin blocks the Bone Crusher. Embercleave, one of the Brush Fires. That's a 4/4 double striking trampler. +3, that's 11 damage.
Yeah, I think that this is all going to come down to that for Emma. Does Emma go for the win here? It looks like this is the window to do so. There's an unknown card in hand for Bursavich, but as you said, is it really getting better from here?
Ooh, doing a little bit of hedging here too. Mutating the Gemrazor to kill that Lucky Clover. Still has the mana here to Embercleave.
That's right. Emma can do this and still the play that Paul had described. And the Gemrazor even is bigger now because it's base stats. It's still getting the +2/+2 though. And here comes the attack, everything into the red zone. This is going to prompt a block from Bursavich.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Austin, you just block the Gemrazor. I mean, if there's an Embercleave, you're dead, right? If there's an Embercleave, there's an Embercleave. So you just kind of block the Gemrazor. The Beanstalk Giant can't get stumped, right, as a follow-up here, even if it blocks the 6/6.
Perhaps Austin going for a block to try to convince Emma.
Yeah, that's what it seems like here.
I've got the chop down or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you're so far behind here if you don't go for the Embercleave, right? You could also just Embercleave the Gemrazor, right? That way, if he does have a chop down, you were going to lose that creature anyways. And you still have enough for lethal damage here because that's 5 points of trample going through in conjunction with the Bone Crusher Giant and the Elemental, which would be 11. That might leave yourself least vulnerable to some kind of bounce spell or removal spell.
Emma's going for it. There's Embercleave.
Yeah, this is it.
Boom.
It's lethal.
This is going to happen, and Emma Handy is going to pick up game number 2. And much to her relief, after a potentially costly misclick in the middle part of the game, Emma, you saw, she calmed herself down. This is what pro players do. And she said, okay, I made a mistake. Get it back together. There's plenty of game to be played. And thankfully, she was able to do that because she just won the game and forces a game 3 against Austin.
Yeah. No, that was an amazing mental recovery based off of what happened there, right? I mean, you're playing an aggressive deck and you just failed to play a 4/3 creature when Austin was on the back foot. So being able to kind of come back from that, I know you saw how she reacted. She just kind of laughed it off, then kind of gathered herself and was like, you know what? This is still not over. I can still win this game. I'm going to set up for the lethal kill on that following turn. And that's what she did.
That's the hard part. Everybody makes mistakes like this. The question is, how do you recover? How do you get yourself back in the mode of focusing on the task at hand? And Emma was able to do that beautifully here and force the game 3 now. Austin is going in the tank. and trying to figure out how best to handle this. Remember, that was a game where, Austin got to sweep the board with Storm's Wrath. A lot of things went well for Austin. It was just sort of just petered out at the very end where he really did need some form of interaction and couldn't find it.
Yeah, I mean, Austin basically found his miracle card there with that Storm's Wrath, because Emma was drawing a ton of cards, had the double edge wall innkeeper, had multiple adventure creatures that she was drawing cards off of, killed the Lotus Cobra that Austin Bursavich started with. So she had kind of everything going, and Austin nearly made a comeback there, but didn't quite have enough.
All right, this is an elimination match. Everybody take a deep breath. We're heading into game number 3. The winner of this game will advance to play against Autumn Burchett in the next round, and the loser is out. You can see two different approaches, right? Emma has the music going, wears her emotions on her sleeve. Austin, stoic. Austin doesn't show what he's feeling. I mean, he did yell at the camera for a minute, but that's about the most you're going to get out of Austin.
Okay, so Austin's going to keep that hand. And, this game, there is a shot that Lotus Cobra lives. And if it does, then Austin's looking totally fine, right? Austin gets to go turn 2 Lotus Cobra, turn 1 Innkeeper, turn 2 Lotus Cobra, into turn 3 Omnath.
So far, that Lotus Cobra does look like it is destined to live. Right now, it's Edgewall Innkeeper to start things off for Emma Handy. Passes the turn back to Austin. There's a lucky Clover as well. Kind of an awkward mix here, right? You've got the Innkeeper and the Clover, but then you've also got Cobra and Omnath. It's a little weird. These two pairs of cards work well with each other, but they don't really cross over particularly well. Still, lots of explosiveness potentially for Austin, as it does look like he'll be able to untap with the Lotus Cobra, the land, and the Omnath ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of great options for Emma on this specific turn. There's some Edgewall Innkeepers that you can play. However, no adventure cards. So you're not really looking to draw any cards next turn. Emma could play just the Brushfire Elemental, get in for a free attack here for 1, and then has access to that Evolving Wilds. So next turn could get in for 5. But
okay, it's going to be Brushfire Elemental on the battlefield here. So that'll have a clean attack in for 1. But as you mentioned, not an amazing turn there. Oh, boy. There's an escape to the wilds here for Austin, who plays out Omnath.
Oh, and draws the Mana Source. So if Emma cannot get that Lotus Cobra off the battlefield, that's going to be a turn 4 escape to the wilds. And you know what? This is the reason to play Lotus Cobra, right? Finally, you get to see the power. If your opponent does, because it's a removal check, very similar to something like an Edgewall Innkeeper. But if your opponent doesn't have the answer, all of a sudden, I mean, you get to see the Lotus Cobra just kind of go off.
Right. It's crazy because of how often it does get answered, so that you kind of think, why am I bothering with this? It just gets killed every time. But it's like what you said. It says you have to. Like, if you don't kill this, I get to do broken things, and we're going to get a chance to see that here. In fact, we already have, I would argue, right? The turn 3 Omnath and turn 4 into Escape to the Wilds is going to be devastating here potentially. Now, Emma on the other side still has a stacked hand, but it hasn't come out in a way that is a lot of pressure for Emma. Emma is still struggling to really get huge pressure on this battlefield.
Yeah. But this is sort of the power too of the Omnath Adventure deck. Sometimes, with cards like Lotus Cobra, you just have the potential draws at kind of relative, like basically unfair starts, right? Mm-hmm. You have those games where you're just kind of playing a normal game, playing some creatures, playing some removal spells, going back and forth. Or you play Omnath with Lotus Cobra on turn 3, play Escape to the Wilds, and all of a sudden it looks like you're playing Historic, right? Because this is what we saw a lot of yesterday, right? Lotus Cobra into Omnath, and now we're going to see another land being played. Lotus Cobra is in play, so that means 5 more mana here for Austin Bursavich to play with. And I mean,
one of those is a Fabled Passage too, Paul. So it'll be 6 more.
Right. Yeah, you're right. So he can, and there's a lucky clover in his hand too. There's double Edgewall Innkeeper and a Bone Crusher Giant. So lots and lots of options here for Austin.
You said it though, Paul. I thought that point you made was so good about the Lotus Cobra that, it isn't often that you get to see it have the impact that it does because it's such a lightning rod. Just any removal kills it basically, and everybody kills it on sight. This is the reason that Austin has accepted that fate where a lot of times it goes, and now stuck on the battlefield, and it's had a dramatic effect on this game.
Absolutely. And I suppose there's no real reason to run out the Innkeeper here. I think you might just want to clear the board if you want, right? So Austin can just go Lucky Clover here into Stomp, get Edgewall Innkeeper and Brushfire Elemental off the battlefield. And I suppose he could still run out one of these Innkeepers if he wants. But and the thing is, you're not really afraid of removal, because if Emma had removal, she certainly would have killed that Lotus Cobra already.
Right. And chat with the solid correction. It actually ended up being 7 mana in the pool there for Austin. So double Edgewall Innkeeper, Lucky Clover.
Yeah.
And now I guess we're going to see a double Stomp here to help clean up the board.
Yeah, I mean,
God, this turn, unbelievable.
Just so you know, Marshall, just so you know, this is turn 4 of the game.
Oh my God.
This is turn 4 of the game. Emma's played 3 lands, played some spells, and Austin has 12 permanents on the battlefield or something. Oh, it looks like 10.
What is Emma supposed to do about this? Is this just, Austin hit the draw with the Cobra into the Omnath, into the Escape to the Wilds, and you just have to say, hey,
yeah,
more power to you?
I mean, that's basically it. I mean, these draws will happen. I didn't have the Stomp this time, and you had like that ideal start: Cobra into Omnath into Escape to the Wilds. That's kind of one of the best possible starts. In addition to Clover into Fertile Footsteps into removal spell, and I think Cobra maybe just is another way for you to have those really explosive starts. Right? It's not a huge cost to play Cobra, and this deck doesn't really play a lot of spells on turn 2 anyways, outside of Lucky Clover. So it's just a way to kind of fill the curve. Sure, there's a bunch of Bone Crusher Giants going around, but hey, if it lives, it's going to do a lot of damage.
You can see that Austin's still very dialed in here. One of the things is that Emma has brought to the party here with this Gruul deck is the fact that there are certain circumstances where Austin can be like, look at all my permanents, look at all this power and toughness, and Emma can still leverage a card like Embercleave to, maybe not win the game on the spot, but force Austin into some very awkward positions. So Austin's staying diligent here and being very careful about each of these plays. At some point you might just think, okay, I have a win here, right? Like I got the turn 3 Omnath and I've been able to go off from there. But no, right? This is, I have to say, Emma's list is one of the few in the field where you go, I got to really think and make sure I don't screw this up, because, getting whacked by an Embercleave a couple of times can knock your life total even from 27 with a big board down. So Austin needs to just make sure that he stays on target here. Also, look at his hand. I mean, he's kind of out of gas here, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's certainly well set up where basically anything is a great draw. An adventure card is fantastic. Escape to the Wilds, of course. But I mean, any adventure card, and he's right back in the mix with those double Edgewall Innkeepers. So Emma's just got to kind of hope that Austin kind of breaks out here. But he's also got that Triumph to cycle, and in a pinch, Austin can just run out the other Omnath just to cycle.
A quick check there was kind of interesting, as you see Emma play a land and then attack in here with this beast. And Austin did a quick land check there, like, hey, do you have enough to actually get an Embercleave down? And yeah, absolutely. So the question becomes, how do you want to play this? And look at this. Austin says, I call.
He's at 27. It doesn't matter, right? So.
And now he knows that there is no Embercleave, at least not this turn. And he'll be paying close attention to see what Emma does for the rest of the turn to try to rule out if an Embercleave was possible there.
Yeah. So Emma's going to get a 6/6 Stone Coil Serpent here. She's going to play it out as a 2/2, then mutate the Gem Razor onto it to deal with that Lucky Clover that's in play. And, you know, that looks like an okay play, but of course we know that Austin has the backup Clover. Oh, and that's the card.
That was really the one, right? The Fae of Wishes off the top of the library. Now, there is no longer a Clover on the battlefield, still one in hand here for Austin, but being able to go search up 2 of those silver bullet style cards that Austin has his sideboard stocked with is probably too much for Emma to look. We are already in the very low percentages. If you're sitting in Emma's seat, this could be the card that puts it down into the 0%.
Yeah. Also note that the land that Austin Bursavich plays in sideboard is a Fabled Passage, which does allow him to basically get 4 mana here with that Omnath that's in play. Actually more, given that the Lotus Cobra is in play. So that gives him access to, by getting the Fabled Passage, that gives him 6 mana. So he could even go Fabled Passage, Escape to the Wilds, and then cast Escape to the Wilds this turn if he wants. He might also be really concerned about potentially dying to an Embercleave, so might try to play around that too.
Yeah, he'll have because he'll have 6 mana from the Omnath and the Cobra, plus the mana from the land itself. He has so much he can do here, and Austin knows the matchup. Austin knows the list. He knows what he needs to play around and make sure that he doesn't lose to, and that's it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if this is just lethal. So how much mana does he have? He has.
Good question.
He has 6-7 mana available to him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, you know, with the Primal Might.
Right.
Get your blockers out of the way, kill you plan may have been live there. I assume it's not now, but maybe.
Yeah, it's not now, but he's going to be able to make a 7 toughness Bone Crusher Giant, which will then cleanly kill this Gem Razor that's in play. Or I suppose can also do it to the Omnath.
Yeah, save the 2 damage. But that Heart's Desire token is enough to prevent lethal, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the team is coming in, and that's going to be a trade with the Bone Crusher.
Down to 1.
But a huge attack step here, and it looks like it's fallen apart for the run for Emma Handy here. Boy, it was fun to watch Emma work her way through her first premier level top 8 finish here, but it's going to be good game, and Austin is going to advance to play against Autumn Burchett. Great job by both competitors, but at the end of the day, it was Austin who was able to do